On February 20th, 1943, high above the treacherous skies of Guadalcanal, Lieutenant Jimmy Collins, an aviator hailing from Iowa, expertly positioned his P-40 fighter aircraft precisely 200 yards astern of a Japanese Oscar fighter. His aiming apparatus, a reflector sight, projected a solitary, luminescent dot, an aiming methodology that had been employed by hunters for many decades. Collins meticulously aligned this glowing indicator directly upon the enemy aircraft's main body and initiated fire. His .50 caliber projectiles, however, soared harmlessly past the Oscar's tail section, missing their intended mark by a considerable margin of 30 feet. The Japanese pilot executed a sharp, evasive maneuver and swiftly disappeared from view. Collins remained unaware that in that critical moment he was attempting to resolve a complex physics conundrum while traveling at an astonishing speed of 200 miles per hour. Within the mere half-second it took for his bullets to traverse those 200 yards, the Oscar fighter had shifted its position a remarkable 180 feet horizontally. By the early months of 1943, a dishearteningly small proportion, fewer than 5%, of American fighter pilots had managed to achieve even a single confirmed aerial victory. Their strategy involved targeting the enemy aircraft's current location, rather than anticipating its future position. Yet, on the other side of the vast Pacific, Major Dick Bong was on the verge of experimenting with a groundbreaking innovation, an intricate mechanical computing device capable of executing 60 complex equations per second, all while he endured the intense physiological strain of 4Gs during aerial combat. Instead of directing their fire at visible enemy aircraft, pilots would now aim at seemingly empty expanses of sky, at ephemeral ghosts that had not yet materialized. This sophisticated machine would undertake the necessary mathematical computations, transforming those illusory targets into devastatingly tangible realities. The oppressive, humid atmosphere characteristic of Guadalcanal in the tropics clung to Lieutenant Jimmy Collins' flight uniform as he ascended into the cockpit of his P-40 Warhawk on that fateful February morning in 1943. At the tender age of 23, this young man, a product of an Iowa farm, had already spent 8 grueling months immersed in the Pacific theater, conducting numerous combat sorties over the Solomon Islands, a region where American forces were relentlessly, albeit slowly, eroding the entrenched Japanese defenses. Collins possessed all the quintessential attributes of a skilled fighter pilot: an unshakable composure, lightning-fast reflexes, and a natural aptitude for mechanical systems, honed from years of repairing tractors since he was merely 14 years old. What he conspicuously lacked, however, was a single verified aerial victory. The pre-mission squadron briefing had proceeded without deviation from the norm. Japanese bombers were anticipated to appear over Henderson Field around the midday hour, under the protective escort of Oscar fighters dispatched from Rabaul. Collins' assigned role was to fly as a wingman to Captain Martinez, maintaining a tight formation with his leader while the more seasoned pilots engaged the enemy. It was a subordinate position Collins had grown increasingly weary of, observing other individuals achieve kills, while his primary responsibility was to maintain formation and, above all, to survive. However, this particular day carried a distinct feeling of change. Martinez had been sidelined due to a bout of dysentery, thrusting Collins into the unprecedented role of leading his own flight element for the very first time. 2 fledgling pilots, freshly graduated from flight school, would be following his lead, placing their nascent trust in him to guide them safely through their inaugural combat mission. The substantial weight of this newfound responsibility settled upon Collins. Shoulders with the familiarity of a long-carried burden as he meticulously performed his pre-flight checks. The oil pressure gauge remained steady, the fuel tanks were fully replenished, and the guns were loaded with a formidable 400 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition per barrel. The N9 reflector sight, prominently mounted on his instrument panel, presented a deceptively straightforward appearance, merely a piece of angled glass that projected a luminous orange dot onto his windscreen. Army gunnery instructors had rigorously ingrained the fundamental principles into every pilot. Center the dot on your target. Get close enough to discern the rivets and then depress the trigger. This methodology was predicated on the identical principle underpinning the iron sights found on rifles, the beads on shotguns, and indeed every aiming system conceived since humanity. Earliest ancestors first hurled spears at moving prey. At precisely 11:30, radar systems detected the inbound aerial assault, a formation of 18 Japanese bombers, meticulously escorted by a dozen Oscar fighters, approaching from the northwest at an altitude of 15,000 feet. Collins expertly guided his flight off Henderson, his steel matting runway, executing a steep climb into the blinding tropical sun. His hands moved with an almost subconscious fluidity across the aircraft controls, mixture-enriched, propeller pitch finely adjusted. Cowl flaps opened to ensure the Allison engine remained adequately cooled in the thinner upper atmosphere. The interception unfolded approximately 20 miles to the north of the airfield. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. What do you think about the incredible challenges faced by early fighter pilots? And where are you watching this from? Collins was the first to discern the enemy formation, a precisely executed V-shape of twin-engine Betty bombers, with their fighter escort weaving protectively above and behind them. The Japanese pilots exhibited a level of precision that was clearly the product of years of rigorous training and hundreds of hours accumulated in combat. Most of them had been actively engaged in hostilities since the invasion of China in 1937, signifying their profound mastery of aerial warfare. Collins issued the command to attack and initiated a steep dive towards a solitary Oscar that had inadvertently strayed from the principal formation. The Japanese fighter was adorned in the variegated green and brown camouflage typical of the Imperial Navy, its distinctive red rising sun insignia strikingly vibrant against the backdrop of the tropical sky. The enemy pilot maintained a straight and level flight path, seemingly oblivious to the trio of Warhawks descending upon him from the advantageous position of the sun. At a range of 400 yards, Collins armed his weaponry and experienced the familiar, unsettling flutter in his stomach that invariably accompanied the onset of combat. The Oscar grew progressively larger within his windscreen, its radial engine cowling and greenhouse canopy becoming distinctly visible. At a distance of 200 yards, Collins precisely centered his reflector sight, orange dot upon the enemy fighter's fuselage, and depressed the trigger. 6 50 caliber machine guns erupted in a synchronized burst of devastating violence. The P-40 vibrated intensely as 48 rounds per second streamed from its wings, tracers etching bright, fiery lines through the tropical air. Collins maintained pressure on the trigger for a full 2 seconds, unleashing nearly 100 rounds towards the Japanese fighter. every single bullet missed its mark. The Oscar continued its unwavering course, entirely unscathed by Collins' barrage. His tracers had streaked past the enemy's tail, missing by what appeared to be a substantial 30 or even 40 feet. The Japanese pilot, seemingly perceiving an imminent threat, abruptly executed a sharp bank to the left and plunged towards a nearby cloud bank. Within mere seconds, he had completely vanished. Collins gazed at his gun sight in profound disbelief. He had meticulously centered the glowing dot directly on the target. His guns were accurately bore-sighted. He had personally verified their calibration on ground targets only 3 days prior. The engagement range had been optimal. His aircraft remained stable, and his aim felt undeniably true. Yet somehow, in an utterly improbable fashion, he had missed entirely. What Collins failed to comprehend was the intricate mathematical basis of his failure. His .50 caliber bullets traveled at an astonishing velocity of 2,800 feet per second. A formidable speed by the standards of infantry combat, but by no means instantaneous. In the fleeting half-second it took for his rounds to traverse 200 yards, the Oscar had shifted its position a remarkable 180 feet sideways, maintaining its cruising speed of 250 miles per hour. Collins had directed his fire at the enemy's immediate location, rather than anticipating its future position at the moment his bullets would arrive. This perplexing phenomenon had a specific designation: deflection error. It was the identical principle that necessitated duck hunters to lead their quarry, shotgunners to smoothly swing through clay pigeons, and naval gunners to meticulously calculate range and bearing before discharging their formidable ordnance. However, in the dynamic environment of aerial combat, at blistering speeds, with targets maneuvering unpredictably in 3 dimensions, these calculations became extraordinarily complex, proving virtually impossible for the human mind to process and resolve in real time. Collins was not an isolated case in his profound frustration. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific, American fighter pilots were consistently confronting the same harsh reality. Squadron after squadron reported distressingly poor gunnery outcomes. Pilots would frequently return from missions having expended their entire ammunition supply without registering a single successful hit. Gun camera footage unequivocally exposed the alarming extent of the problem: American fighters engaging Japanese aircraft and missing by astonishing margins, their bullets harmlessly passing through empty air where targets had been mere moments before. The statistical data was utterly devastating. By the early part of 1943, a minuscule percentage, fewer than 5% of American fighter pilots had managed to achieve even one confirmed aerial kill. The select handful of successful aces, individuals of the caliber of Dick Bong, Bob Johnson, and Tommy McGuire, were responsible for an overwhelming 95% of the actual aerial victories. These natural shots possessed an intrinsic, almost intuitive grasp of deflection shooting that simply could not be imparted through conventional training methodologies. The core issue was not a deficiency in courage or flying prowess. American pilots demonstrated bravery to the point of recklessness, and their aircraft were progressively becoming more advanced and capable. The newly introduced P-38 Lightning and P-51 Mustang could decisively outperform anything the Japanese or Germans could deploy in the air. However, superior aircraft proved utterly meaningless if their pilots were incapable of hitting their intended targets. As Collins carefully guided his P-40 back towards Henderson Field, he remained unaware that British scientists had already identified the definitive solution to his persistent problem. In clandestine workshops situated at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, engineers were diligently perfecting a revolutionary device capable of automatically solving complex deflection equations, a gyroscopic gun sight that would fundamentally transform aerial gunnery forever. This groundbreaking technology would reach American squadrons within a matter of months, effectively transforming average pilots into exceptionally lethal marksmen and irrevocably altering the trajectory of the air war. But on this particular February afternoon, soaring through the sweltering tropical heat above Guadalcanal, Jimmy Collins could only ponder the perplexing question of why his seemingly perfect shot had missed by such a significant margin, and whether he would ever truly join the elite ranks of pilots who could consistently hit what they aimed at. Dr. Leslie Cunningham meticulously adjusted his wire-rimmed spectacles higher on his nose and intently observed the rapidly spinning gyroscope resting on his laboratory bench at the Royal Aircraft Establishment in Farnborough. The intricate device, no larger than a standard coffee cup, rotated at an impressive 18,000 revolutions per minute, its highly polished metal surface reflecting the harsh, fluorescent illumination of the research facility. When Cunningham attempted to manipulate the gyroscope's mounting bracket, the rapidly spinning wheel resisted with a surprising degree of force, striving to maintain its original spatial orientation. This fundamental principle was known as gyroscopic precession. A mass in rapid rotation would invariably endeavor to remain aligned with its initial axis, irrespective of how violently its surrounding environment might move. It was March 1941, and the ongoing Battle of Britain had laid bare a disquieting truth concerning aerial combat. RAF pilots, despite their undeniable courage and the superior performance of their aircraft, were missing their targets with an alarming and consistent frequency. Gun camera footage meticulously collected from Hurricane and Spitfire squadrons vividly illustrated British fighters engaging German bombers and hitting nothing but empty air. The fundamental issue was not a lack of pilot skill or deficiencies in aircraft performance. It was the inherent impossibility of accurately calculating dynamic deflection angles while simultaneously flying at speeds approaching 300 miles per hour. The intricate problem of accurately targeting aerial adversaries, particularly those maneuvering at speeds approaching 300 km/h, presented a formidable challenge to pilots during wartime. For months, a brilliant individual named Cunningham had dedicated himself to unraveling the complex mathematical principles inherent in this dilemma. He understood that when a fighter pilot engaged a rapidly moving target, the aim point could not be the enemy aircraft itself, but rather a specific empty point in space where the target would be positioned by the time the projectiles reached their destination. This critical calculation demanded instantaneous knowledge of the target's velocity, trajectory, distance, and rate of turn, all dynamic variables that constantly shifted during the unpredictable chaos of aerial combat. Human cognitive abilities were simply incapable of processing such rapid mathematical computations, yet Cunningham posited that a gyroscopic mechanism possessed the potential to bridge this gap. Cunningham's pivotal insight emerged from his profound understanding that the identical physical laws governing the stability of his laboratory gyroscopes could be ingeniously repurposed to forecast the future motion of an aircraft. His innovative concept involved integrating gyroscopes into an aircraft's gun sight, enabling them to detect any rotational movement and, in turn, automatically compute the precise future location of a target. This meant that the pilot would be liberated from the arduous task of performing complex mathematical equations. The machine itself would mechanically resolve the challenging deflection problem, offering an unprecedented level of precision and speed. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The initial prototype constructed by Cunningham was a marvel of mechanical engineering, bearing a striking resemblance to a sophisticated mechanical brain. Within a compact casing, barely larger than a typical shoebox, 2 gyroscopes, each meticulously engineered to spin at an astonishing 15,000 revolutions per minute (RPM), were mounted orthogonally to each other. One of these precision gyroscopes was specifically designed to detect lateral left-to-right turning motions, while its counterpart was configured to sense vertical up and down movements. A series of electric motors diligently maintained the gyro's rapid rotation, and an elaborate arrangement of gears, cams, and specialized optical instruments translated their subtle motions into crucial aiming corrections. These corrections were then projected directly onto the pilot's windscreen, providing an intuitive visual aid for targeting. The operational principle of this innovative sight involved the superimposition of 2 distinct visual elements. A fixed circular reticle indicated the precise direction in which the aircraft's guns were oriented, while a dynamic diamond pattern, constantly shifting, automatically adjusted its position based on the intricate calculations performed by the gyroscopes. The pilot's role, though seemingly straightforward, was remarkably effective. They would first input the target's wingspan using a dedicated dial, then fine-tune for range, and finally maintain the moving diamond pattern directly over the target while engaging the trigger. The sophisticated gyroscopic system would adeptly manage all other complex variables, ensuring optimal aiming. Initial evaluations commenced at the Royal Aircraft Establishment's dedicated gunnery range in the latter part of 1941. Squadron leader James Johnson, an accomplished pilot, boasting a formidable record of 12 confirmed aerial victories, willingly volunteered to participate in the inaugural live fire exercises. Johnson, through countless hours of rigorous combat, had meticulously honed his deflection shooting prowess, learning to estimate lead angles with an intuitive precision born of hard-won experience. Consequently, he harbored a profound skepticism regarding the capacity of any mechanical apparatus to surpass human intuition in such a critical skill. The designated test target was a Henley target tug aircraft, executing a series of predictable flight patterns at an altitude of 2,000 feet. Utilizing his conventional reflector sight, Johnson achieved hits with approximately 30% of his expended ammunition, a remarkable level of accuracy by the stringent standards of the Royal Air Force. Subsequently, skilled technicians meticulously installed Cunningham's cutting-edge gyroscopic sight into Johnson's Hurricane. During his very first pass with this novel device, Johnson observed the diamond pattern gracefully tracking smoothly ahead of the target aircraft, precisely leading it by the optimal amount. He unleashed a 2-second burst of fire and witnessed his tracer rounds emphatically tear into the Henley's wing root. The hit percentage achieved with the gyroscopic sight soared to an astounding 75%. Upon landing his Hurricane, Johnson immediately sought a meeting with Fighter Command Headquarters, profoundly impressed by the site's capabilities. Within a matter of weeks, the Air Ministry formally designated Cunningham's groundbreaking invention as most secret and promptly issued orders for its immediate mass production. The United States gained awareness of the British gyro site through discreet intelligence channels in late 1942. Colonel Cass Howe, who held the esteemed position of Chief of the Army Air Force's Armament Division, undertook a journey to England to personally scrutinize the device. What he discovered far surpassed all prior expectations. The Royal Air Force's gyroscopic sights were demonstrably transforming pilots of average skill into exceptionally lethal marksmen. Squadrons that had been outfitted with these innovative devices were consistently reporting kill ratios 3 times greater than those units still relying on traditional fixed sights. Huff promptly established contact with the Sperry Corporation in Brooklyn, a preeminent American manufacturer renowned for its precision instruments. Sperry's highly skilled engineers had been at the forefront of developing sophisticated fire control systems for naval artillery since the 1920s, rendering them uniquely qualified to undertake the mass production of the British design. By January 1943, Sperry had successfully reverse-engineered Cunningham's prototype and commenced the manufacturing of the American iteration, officially designated as the K-14 computing gun sight. The K-14, a testament to refined engineering, simultaneously exhibited greater complexity and enhanced elegance when compared to its British precursor. Sperry's ingenious engineers meticulously refined the gyroscopic mechanism, achieving a notable reduction in weight from 18 pounds to a mere 13 pounds, all while significantly improving its overall reliability. The sight's advanced optical system projected its aiming images with astonishing clarity, maintaining perfect visibility even amidst the intense vibrations and formidable G-forces encountered during violent combat maneuvers. Crucially, American manufacturing techniques facilitated the production of these devices on an unprecedented scale. Sperry's Brooklyn factory rapidly achieved a remarkable output of 1,000 Ke-14 sights per month, a testament to its industrial prowess. Each individual K-14 unit was an intricate assembly, comprising over 400 meticulously precision-machined components. The gyroscopes, critical to its operation, rotated within jeweled bearings, a design reminiscent of those found in high-end luxury watches, enabling them to sustain their impressive 18,000 RPM rotation for hundreds of demanding combat hours. Electric motors, powered by the aircraft's onboard generator, maintained the gyros' continuous spin, while an elaborate mechanical computer translated their delicate precession into aiming corrections accurate to mere fractions of a degree. Despite its internal complexity, the sight's operational methodology remained elegantly straightforward. A pilot would first identify an enemy aircraft and initiate tracking through a gentle turn. As the fighter banked to pursue its target, the K-14's sensitive gyroscopes detected the rotational motion and instantaneously commenced calculating the intricate interception geometry. The pilot would then set the target's wingspan using a knurled dial conveniently located on the sight's housing, 32 feet for a Messerschmitt, 40 feet for a Zero, and 64 feet for a bomber. A twist grip integrated into the throttle allowed for precise adjustment of range. The gyroscopes, with their inherent sophistication, managed all other variables, projecting the dynamic diamond pattern at precisely the correct point in the empty expanse of space. Training pilots to effectively utilize the K-14 necessitated a complete paradigm shift from traditional gunnery instruction. For many decades, marksmen had been rigorously taught to aim directly at their targets. The K-14, however, demanded that pilots aim at an empty patch of sky, placing their trust in the machine's intricate calculations over the evidence of their own eyes. Many seasoned pilots found this psychological barrier particularly challenging. Their ingrained instincts vehemently protested that firing at nothing would inevitably result in a missed shot. Yet, the irrefutable mathematics consistently proved otherwise, demonstrating the sight's superior accuracy. By the summer of 1943, the initial consignments of K-14 sights began reaching combat squadrons deployed across both the Pacific and European theaters. These advanced devices arrived accompanied by stringent security classifications and comprehensive technical manuals, but notably without a centralized or comprehensive training program. Squadron commanders were thus tasked with the responsibility of devising their own methods for instructing pilots in the use of this revolutionary technology. While some units demonstrated remarkable adaptability and quickly integrated the new system, others grappled with overcoming decades of entrenched conventional wisdom regarding aerial gunnery. The stage was thus meticulously set for the K-14's crucial combat debut, where American pilots would definitively ascertain whether a mechanical brain could indeed solve the age-old complex problem of accurately hitting rapidly moving targets within a three-dimensional battlespace. Captain Chuck Jorger expertly banked his P-51 Mustang into a climbing turn high above the picturesque Romanian countryside, his keen eyes meticulously scanning the vast expanse of sky for the anticipated presence of Luftwaffe fighters. Intelligence reports had unequivocally promised that these formidable adversaries would be defending the vital Ploiești oil refineries. The date was August 15, 1944, and the 8th Air Force was in the midst of its third major offensive against Germany's most critical petroleum supply. Below, towering columns of dense black smoke billowed upwards from burning storage tanks, while American bombers relentlessly continued their methodical destruction of Hitler's essential fuel reserves. At the tender age of 21, Jorger had already firmly established his reputation as one of the 363rd Fighter Squadron's most aggressive and skilled pilots. He had achieved his inaugural aerial victory just 3 months prior, successfully downing a Messerschmitt Bf 109 over the skies of France during the intense D-Day air battles. However, that particular triumph had necessitated closing to within a mere 100 yards of his target, a proximity so close that he could discern the German pilot's facial features before initiating his attack. Today's mission, he instinctively knew, would unfold differently. Mounted discreetly behind Jorger's head was one of the very first K-14 computing gun sights to reach the 8th Air Force, a groundbreaking device that held the profound promise of fundamentally revolutionizing aerial gunnery. This innovative sight had arrived at Leaston Airfield a mere 2 weeks earlier, accompanied by a dedicated team of Sperry Corporation technicians who had spent days meticulously calibrating its delicate gyroscopic mechanism. Jorger himself had completed 3 intensive training missions with the K-14, diligently learning to place his trust in its moving diamond pattern, even over his own battle-hardened and combat-tested instincts The psychological adjustment required to fully embrace the K-14 was, for Jorger, considerably more challenging than mastering its mechanical operation. Every ingrained lesson he had ever received about gunnery adamantly instructed him to aim directly at his target. Yet the K-14 unequivocally demanded that he fire into an empty expanse of sky, precisely where mathematical calculations indicated his target would eventually be. The first true test of the K-14's capabilities occurred at an altitude of 14,000 feet, when Jorger detected a solitary Messerschmitt Bf-109 climbing purposefully towards the bomber stream. The German fighter was adorned in the standard gray-green camouflage distinctive of Jagdgeschwader 53, its distinctive yellow wingtips serving as a clear indicator that it belonged to an experienced pilot, one who had undoubtedly survived years of arduous combat over the unforgiving battlegrounds of North Africa and the Eastern Front. The Messerschmitt was intersecting Jorger's flight path at a precise 45-degree angle, presenting precisely the kind of challenging deflection shot that had consistently frustrated American pilots for the preceding 2 years. Had Jorger been relying on his older N9 reflector sight, he would have been compelled to close to within 200 yards and then merely hope for a fortunate burst of fire. The deflection angle was simply too steep to achieve reliable hits at longer ranges, and the astute German pilot would almost certainly initiate evasive maneuvers once he detected the pursuing Mustang. The pilot, having sighted the pursuing Mustang, quickly realized he was being hunted. However, the introduction of the K-14 computing sight fundamentally altered the dynamics of aerial combat. This ingenious device allowed Jorger to initiate his attack from an impressive 800 yards, a distance far beyond the capabilities of most pilots to accurately compute the necessary lead angles for a successful shot. With a practiced hand, Jorger adjusted his wingspan dial to 32 feet, precisely matching the measured tip-to-tip span of the Bf-109. He then refined his range estimation by manipulating the twist grip on his throttle. Observing as the K-14's internal gyroscopes silently commenced their intricate calculations, translating complex variables into a precise aiming solution. The sophisticated sight system projected 2 distinct visual cues onto his windscreen. One was a stable, fixed circle, indicating the precise point where his 6 formidable .50 caliber machine guns were converged. The other was a dynamic, moving diamond pattern that seemed to dance across the expansive sky, serving as a mechanical prognostication of the enemy aircraft future position. The German pilot, meanwhile, maintained his unswerving ascent, seemingly oblivious to the deadly precision that was inexorably tracking him from below. Jorger skillfully guided his aircraft through a gentle left turn, meticulously maintaining a smooth flight path to prevent any disruption to the sensitive gyroscopic mechanisms. The K-14, its predictive diamond pattern glided effortlessly ahead of the Messerschmitt, leading the target by what appeared to be an astonishing 60 feet, an aiming point that seemed impossibly distant from the actual aircraft. Physical location. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. At a range of 600 yards, Jorger decisively pressed his trigger. Immediately, a synchronized torrent of fire erupted from his 6 machine guns, propelling a dense stream of .50 caliber rounds through the rarefied air at an astonishing velocity of 2,800 feet per second. Jorger maintained his grip on the trigger for a precisely measured 2 seconds, unleashing a concentrated burst of 192 rounds that meticulously followed the K-14's calculated trajectory. The ensuing devastation was instantaneous and absolute. Jorger's projectiles arrived at the exact moment the climbing Messerschmitt entered the precise space that had been vacant just a split second earlier. Armor-piercing rounds ripped through the German fighter, engine cowling with brutal efficiency, while incendiary bullets ignited fuel lines and hydraulic systems, turning the aircraft into a fiery inferno. The Bf-109's left wing buckled dramatically upwards as its structural integrity catastrophically failed, sending the entire aircraft into an uncontrolled tumble towards the Romanian countryside far below. Jorger observed the German pilot successfully bail out, his parachute blooming into a stark white contrast against the verdant farmland. The entire engagement, from the initial contact to the decisive victory, had transpired in a mere 12 seconds, half the duration of Jorger's previous successful kills, and achieved at twice the customary range. Significantly, Jorger had expended only 192 rounds to secure this kill, a stark contrast to the 400 to 600 rounds he typically required in similar combat scenarios. The efficiency enhancements brought about by the K-14 were nothing short of extraordinary across the entirety of the 8th Air Force. Squadrons that had been equipped with the K-14 sights reported a drastic reduction in ammunition consumption, plummeting by an impressive 60%, while simultaneously witnessing their kill rates double. The highly acclaimed 357th Fighter Group, affectionately known as the Y-Fighter Boys, experienced a remarkable surge in their monthly kill totals, escalating from 15 to 35 after their conversion to these revolutionary gyroscopic sights. Even more telling was the significant increase in the percentage of pilots who were able to score kills, rising from the traditional 5% to nearly 20%, indicating a democratization of aerial marksmanship. Colonel Hubert Zemke, the esteemed commander of the 56th Fighter Group, meticulously compiled detailed statistical data on the K-14's effectiveness throughout the summer of 1944. His findings revealed that pilots utilizing the advanced computing sight achieved an average of 2.2 kills per mission, a stark contrast to the mere 0.8 kills averaged by those still relying on conventional fixed reflector sights. This disparity was even more pronounced in long-range engagements extending beyond 400 yards, where traditional sights proved virtually ineffectual. Yet the K-14 consistently maintained its remarkable accuracy. The psychological ramifications for Luftwaffe pilots were both immediate and profound. German combat reports began to frequently allude to an uncanny precision exhibited by American fighters, with seasoned pilots describing encounters where enemy aircraft appeared to anticipate their every maneuver. Oberst Johannes Steinhoff, a celebrated ace, credited with over 100 victories, poignantly recorded in his diary, "The Americans fire at empty sky, yet every bullet finds its mark. It is as if they possess supernatural foresight." Subsequent intelligence analysis of captured German documents unveiled the enemy, escalating desperation to comprehend the dramatic improvements in American gunnery. Luftwaffe technical teams meticulously examined wreckage from downed P-52s and P-38s, diligently searching for any clues regarding the mysterious surge in accuracy. They eventually discovered the K-14 sights, but were critically hampered by their industrial limitations, lacking the capacity to successfully reverse engineer the intricate gyroscopic mechanisms. German attempts to develop comparable technology were ultimately thwarted by severe material shortages and the pervasive chaos stemming from a collapsing industrial infrastructure. By September 1944, the differential in combat effectiveness had become so pronounced that German fighter pilots began to actively avoid engagement entirely whenever they identified American formations. The kill-to-loss ratio within the European theaters soared to an astounding 10:1 in favor of the Americans, effectively neutralizing the Luftwaffe as a significant strategic force. While Fighter Command Headquarters attributed 60% of this improvement to enhanced training and refined tactics, frontline squadron commanders were acutely aware of the underlying truth. The K-14 computing site had transformed even average pilots into exceptionally lethal marksmen. This revolution extended beyond individual pilot performance. Squadron-level tactics underwent significant evolution, adapting to fully exploit the K-14's extended range accuracy. American fighters began engaging enemy formations from distances previously deemed ineffective. The traditional dogfight, characterized by aircraft maneuvering at close quarters until one pilot secured an advantage, became increasingly infrequent. American pilots mastered the art of destroying their adversaries before ever needing to close to visual range. However, even as the K-14 reached its zenith of effectiveness, disquieting reports emanating from the Pacific Theater hinted at formidable new challenges on the horizon. Japanese pilots were describing American aircraft possessing impossible speed and maneuverability, a clear indication that nascent jet technology might soon render even the revolutionary computing site obsolete. Major Dick Bong, with a practiced motion, adjusted his parachute straps and settled into the familiar cockpit of his P-38 Lightning at Tacloban Airstrip on Leyte. He observed a cluster of replacement pilots gathering around his aircraft, a scene that had become a weekly ritual. It was December 17, 1944, and Bong had just returned from a dawn patrol that had elevated his confirmed kill total to 39. Placing him tantalizingly close to the coveted number 40 that would indelibly etch his name into aviation history. The young pilots, fresh from their stateside training schools, gazed at America's leading ace with a mixture of profound awe and an almost desperate hope that some of his legendary lethal skill might somehow transfer to them. The morning briefing had highlighted scattered Japanese air activity over Ormoc, where American amphibious forces were diligently establishing another crucial foothold in the Philippines. Intelligence suggested the enemy might attempt one final desperate air offensive to disrupt the ongoing landings, committing their remaining experienced pilots and precious fuel reserves to a last-ditch gambit. Bong was tasked with leading a sweep of 4 P-38s, their mission to hunt for any Japanese aircraft audacious enough to challenge American air superiority. Lieutenant Tommy Morrison, a 20-year-old from Kansas with precisely 0 combat victories to his name, nervously raised his hand. "Major Bong, sir, could you perhaps demonstrate how the K-14 site truly functions? I mean, in an actual combat scenario." Morrison had been in the theater for 6 weeks and had discharged his guns in anger exactly twice, both times missing Japanese fighters by margins that seemed inexplicable given his seemingly perfect sight picture. Bong offered a reassuring smile and gestured towards his Lightning's nose, where the K-14 computing gun sight was securely mounted behind a protective armored glass panel. This device represented the pinnacle of wartime technological innovation, a 13-pound marvel of precision gyroscopes, intricate electric motors, and sophisticated optical systems capable of solving complex deflection equations 60 times per second, even while the aircraft endured the punishing forces of 4Gs during violent combat maneuvers. The sight itself doesn't inherently make you a superior pilot, Bong patiently elucidated. It simply ensures that the complex mathematics involved are virtually impossible to err on. He then directed their attention towards a flight of Navy F-6F Hellcats practicing gunnery runs against a target sleeve 3 miles offshore. Observe those Hellcats. Notice how they are compelled to close in, perhaps within 200 yards, before they achieve consistent hits. That is because they are still employing fixed sights, aiming where the target currently is, rather than anticipating where it will be. Bong's voice carried the undeniable authority of a man who had not only survived but thrived through 200 perilous combat missions in the most dangerous airspace on Earth. The practical demonstration unfolded sooner than anticipated. At an altitude of 11,000 feet over Ormoc, Bong's flight successfully intercepted a lone Japanese Kawasaki Ki-61 Tony fighter, which was attempting to photograph American beach positions. The enemy pilot displayed considerable skill, expertly weaving through scattered clouds while maintaining just enough altitude to make a swift escape should American fighters materialize. Most pilots would have been forced to meticulously maneuver for an optimal firing position, closing to point-blank range before attempting a shot. Bong, however, possessed a more efficient solution. He precisely set his K-14 CS wingspan dial to 32 feet, the known span of the Tony, and adjusted his range estimate to a considerable 600 yards. The gyroscopic sight immediately commenced tracking the Japanese fighter's crossing flight path with unerring accuracy, projecting its distinctive moving diamond pattern a full 40 feet ahead of the actual aircraft. To the replacement pilots flying in Bong's wake, it appeared as though he was aiming at an empty expanse of sky. The Tony pilot, sensing an imminent threat, suddenly executed a steep climbing turn to the right. This maneuver would have unequivocally disrupted any conventional gunnery solution, compelling attacking fighters to reposition for a subsequent pass. Yet, the K-14's advanced gyroscopes instantaneously detected the target's increased turn rate and automatically recalibrated the aiming point. Bong's diamond pattern swung smoothly ahead of the climbing Tony, now leading it by what appeared to be an astonishing 80 feet. He had closed the distance, now estimated at a mere 80 feet. From his formidable P-38 Lightning, Bong unleashed a devastating 3-second volley, simultaneously discharging his 4 20mm cannons and 4 50 caliber machine guns. Although the heavier cannon rounds exhibited a marginally slower velocity compared to the rapid-fire machine gun bullets, the sophisticated K-14 computing sight had meticulously computed and established the perfect convergence point for these disparate weapon systems. A torrent of 112 projectiles erupted from Bong's aircraft, forming a meticulously targeted stream that sliced through the humid tropical atmosphere, appearing almost as a preordained trajectory of destruction. The enemy Tony fighter, caught squarely in this lethal crossfire, had no chance. Explosive 20mm ordnance catastrophically ripped through the fighter's wing root, while the armor-piercing 50 caliber rounds relentlessly perforated its vital engine block and ruptured its fuel tanks. The Japanese warplane instantly fragmented in a spectacular burst of vivid orange flames, its incandescent wreckage plummeting in fiery fragments towards the dense jungle canopy below. Tragically, the unfortunate pilot was afforded no opportunity to escape his doomed craft. As his P-38 gracefully peeled away from the scattering remains of his latest victim, Bong activated his radio microphone. His calm, assured voice crackled through the comms. "Gentlemen, you have just witnessed kill number 40. He continued, offering a concise yet profound commentary on his method. "Observe, I did not engage in a protracted pursuit. I refrained from entering into a dogfight involving intricate turns. Crucially, I conserved precious ammunition. The K-14 computing site performed the essential calculations. My role was simply to maintain the targeting reticle's diamond patterns upon the adversary and actuate the firing mechanism." While his tone maintained a veneer of professional composure, the cadre of replacement pilots listening intently could discern the profound satisfaction emanating from a mission flawlessly accomplished. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The profound importance of Bong's 40th aerial victory transcended mere individual accomplishment. This monumental achievement solidified his status as the inaugural American aviator to attain such a distinguished benchmark, effectively eclipsing the combat records of even the most formidable German and Japanese aces from the initial phases of the global conflict. More critically, his unparalleled success served as irrefutable proof of the K-14 site revolutionary capacity to fundamentally reconfigure aerial engagement, shifting it from an intuitive art form into a precise, quantifiable science. While Bong himself possessed an innate talent for deflection shooting, a predatory instinct meticulously refined over countless hours of hunting on his family, expansive Wisconsin farm, the innovative computing site democratized these lethal capabilities, rendering them replicable by even pilots of average skill. The quantitative repercussions of this technological advancement were nothing short of astonishing. Fighter squadrons that integrated the K-14 sites into their aircraft began to report kill ratios that dramatically exceeded all pre-war prognostications and operational benchmarks. For instance, the renowned 475th Fighter Group, operating their P-38 Lightnings with devastating efficacy over the Philippine archipelago, documented an incredible 20-to-1 exchange rate against the dwindling Japanese air units still attempting to resist. Similarly impressive figures were recorded in the European theater, where the 357th Fighter Group achieved comparable results against the formidable Luftwaffe. Pilots who had previously grappled with the challenge of securing even a single confirmed kill found their fortunes entirely reversed, rapidly ascending to ace status within mere weeks of being outfitted with these groundbreaking gyroscopic computing sites. Captain Bob Johnson, a distinguished aviator and the European theater's second highest scoring ace, with an impressive tally of 27 confirmed victories, initially harbored a strong skepticism towards the K-14, viewing it as an superfluous and overly complex addition to his combat arsenal. Johnson had meticulously honed his formidable deflection shooting prowess through hundreds of intense combat hours, learning to instinctively gauge lead angles through a potent combination of innate intuition and invaluable, hard-won operational experience. The very notion of deferring to a mechanical device over his own acutely developed judgment seemed anathema to a pilot whose continued survival had hinged entirely upon the unwavering reliability of his personal instincts. However, a singular mission utilizing the computing site a sortie over the heavily defended skies of Berlin that yielded an astonishing 3 confirmed kills, irrevocably transformed Johnson into the K-14's most fervent and articulate proponent. "This contraption possesses superior vision to my own," he candidly confessed to his astonished squadron mates. "While I can perceive the target's current maneuvers, the sight presciently anticipates its subsequent actions." Johnson's dramatic change of heart mirrored a broader trend observed among seasoned aviators across both the European and Pacific theaters of war. An initial wave of cautious skepticism invariably receded, giving way to unbridled enthusiasm once these pilots personally encountered and experienced the K-14's transformative capabilities. The psychological warfare implications of this technological edge were equally significant and far-reaching. Japanese pilots, increasingly unnerved, began to circulate reports attributing supernatural accuracy to American fighter aircraft, often recounting harrowing engagements where the enemy appeared to anticipate their every evasive maneuver with uncanny precision. Furthermore, intercepted radio communications provided compelling evidence of a burgeoning reluctance among enemy pilots to engage American formations, a hesitation that persisted even when they enjoyed a numerical advantage in the skies. By the latter months of 1944, the formidable synergy forged by the widespread deployment of K-14 sites and significantly enhanced pilot training programs had effectively neutralized Japanese air resistance across the Philippine archipelago. Hostile aircraft became an infrequent sight over American-held positions, and when they did venture forth, the ensuing aerial encounters were invariably swift, decisive, and overwhelmingly one-sided. The Imperial Navy's dwindling cadre of carrier pilots, many of whom were hardened veterans forged in the crucible of Pearl Harbor and the pivotal early Pacific engagements, found themselves utterly defenseless against American fighters capable of prosecuting accurate attacks from distances they had previously considered entirely secure. Nevertheless, even as the K-14 system attained the zenith of its operational effectiveness, disquieting intelligence dispatches began to emanate from the European theater. German jet fighters, a new and formidable aerial threat, were appearing in ever greater numbers over the Reich. These revolutionary aircraft possessed such blistering speed that even the advanced computing sight found itself struggling to accurately calculate the requisite lead angles for effective engagement. The golden era of the gyroscopic gun sight, it seemed, was inexorably drawing to a close, paradoxically, just as it had achieved its pinnacle of technological sophistication and combat functionality. Major Dick Bong traversed the expansive concrete ramp at Lockheed's Burbank facility. On the somber morning of August 6, 1945, the rhythmic click of his flight boots, echoing softly against the pavement, still damp from California. Nocturnal rainfall. The elegant P-80 Shooting Star, poised majestically before him, embodied a radical departure from every characteristic of the propeller-driven fighters that had defined World War II. Absent were the familiar whirling blades, the cacophonous roar of radial engines, and the pervasive vibration of reciprocating pistons. Instead, there was only the sleek, almost whispered assurance of unadulterated jet propulsion, a force capable of propelling an aircraft beyond the astonishing speed of 500 miles per hour. At the youthful age of 25, Bong had ascended beyond the mere title of America's preeminent ace, having secured an unparalleled 40 confirmed victories. He stood as the quintessential personification of aerial warfare's golden epoch, a humble farm boy from the heartland of Wisconsin, who had, through a unique synthesis of innate predatory instinct and groundbreaking technological innovation, achieved mastery over the intricate art of three-dimensional combat. The K-14 computing gun sight had served to magnify his already formidable hunting abilities, elevating them to a level bordering on mechanical flawlessness. Yet the global conflict that had concurrently forged both the man and the machine was swiftly drawing to its inevitable conclusion. Germany had capitulated a full 3 months prior, and Japan's beleaguered Air Force now existed predominantly as theoretical entries on organizational charts rather than as a tangible presence in the vast expanse of the Pacific skies. Lockheed Aircraft Corporation had wisely extended an offer to Bong for the prestigious role of chief test pilot within their nascent jet fighter program, astutely recognizing that his unparalleled combat experience would prove immeasurably valuable in guiding American aviation's pivotal transition from the propeller-driven era to the dawning jet age. The P-80, a marvel of aerodynamic design, represented America's direct response to the formidable German Me-262, a sleek and revolutionary fighter that held the promise of rendering all preceding aircraft as antiquated as biplanes. However, in stark contrast to the piston-engine fighters that Bong had so masterfully commanded, the innovative shooting star was conspicuously devoid of a gyroscopic gun sight. Its unprecedented velocity rendered the already intricate technique of traditional deflection shooting even more exceedingly challenging. Paradoxically, the advanced technological solutions required to address these emerging complexities seemed to remain firmly anchored in the preceding generation of aircraft design. Bong eased himself into the P-80's confined cockpit, immediately noticing the uncanny and unfamiliar stillness, the profound absence of the characteristic engine vibration as the potent Allison J-33 turbojet gently spooled up to its idle power setting. Despite the aircraft's radically unconventional design, the flight controls responded with an impressive and reassuring degree of sensitivity, and the panoramic visibility afforded by the expansive bubble canopy far surpassed anything he had ever experienced within the confines of his beloved P-38 Lightning. Nevertheless, a deep-seated unease settled upon him. There was something fundamentally amiss about operating an aircraft without the familiar guiding diamond patterns of the K-14 sight shimmering across his windscreen. The very mechanical intellect that had been instrumental in forging him into the most lethal aviator in American history. The takeoff sequence at Burbank proved to be deceptively effortless and remarkably smooth. In stark contrast to the thunderous, visceral acceleration characteristic of piston-engined fighters, the P-80 accumulated velocity with a nuanced and profound efficiency, gracefully lifting from the runway after traversing a mere 800 feet of concrete. Bong swiftly retracted the landing gear, immediately sensing the shooting star's impeccably clean aerodynamic profile effortlessly propelling him into a climb rate that would have been utterly unattainable for any propeller-driven aircraft. Upon reaching an altitude of 10,000 feet, he smoothly leveled off, commencing a meticulous exploration of the jet's intricate handling characteristics, filled with an almost childlike wonder at the sustained responsiveness of the flight controls, even when hurtling through the air at nearly 450 miles per hour. However, the P-80's groundbreaking performance capabilities were inextricably linked to a new echelon of equally revolutionary perils. The aircraft's intricate fuel system presented a level of complexity far exceeding anything Bong had previously encountered. demanding the most meticulous management of its numerous pumps and interconnected tanks to ensure continuous and proper engine operation. Unlike the forgiving nature of piston fighters, which possessed the inherent ability to glide considerable distances even with defunct engines, the shooting star, deprived of its jet propulsion, instantly transformed into a sleek yet utterly inert projectile. Furthermore, ejection seats remained in an embryonic, experimental stage of development, implying that any low-altitude emergency would almost certainly culminate in a catastrophic and fatal outcome. Precisely at 2:30 in the afternoon, without the slightest premonition, the P-80's primary fuel pump suffered a catastrophic failure. Bong immediately detected the engine's characteristic smooth whine begin to waver and then falter ominously as the vital fuel pressure plummeted below critical operational thresholds. He estimated he had a mere 30 seconds of residual power at his disposal, a fleeting window of opportunity, just barely sufficient to attempt a perilous dead-stick landing back at Burbank, provided his reaction was instantaneous and flawlessly executed. The stark alternative presented itself as an ejection from an experimental seat, a device that tragically had claimed the lives of more test pilots than it had successfully saved. With grim determination, Bong made the resolute choice to remain with his imperiled aircraft. He instinctively pushed the aircraft's nose downward, a critical maneuver to preserve essential flying speed, and initiated a measured, shallow gliding turn, aiming his crippled jet back towards the familiar expanse of the Lockheed runway. The P-80's inherently clean aerodynamic configuration bestowed upon it commendable glide characteristics, yet the unforgiving laws of physics and mathematics presented a stark reality. He was positioned 3 miles distant from the airfield at an altitude of 5,000 feet, and steadily losing height at an alarming rate of 800 feet per minute. The calculated parameters for a successful landing appeared tantalizingly close, perhaps even attainable, but only if he executed an absolutely flawless approach, utterly devoid of any allowance for even the slightest miscalculation or error. The sleek shooting star continued its rapid descent, passing through the 4,000-foot mark as Bong meticulously aligned his trajectory with Burbank's primary runway. His airspeed remained consistently stable at 180 mph, a considerable velocity for a dead-stick landing maneuver, yet absolutely imperative to preserve adequate control authority over the stricken aircraft. At an altitude of 2,000 feet, he manually deployed the landing gear, immediately sensing the aircraft's glide angle perceptibly steepen as the extended wheels generated additional aerodynamic drag. The runway now seemed within reach, but the margin for success was perilously narrow. The runway appeared agonizingly close, yet frustratingly out of reach. At a mere 500 feet above the earth, Major Richard Bong, America's leading fighter ace, was gripped by the chilling realization that his P-80 shooting star would not make the airfield. His aircraft's glide path, now irrevocably set, was projected to terminate in a densely populated residential area located just 3 blocks beyond the airport's perimeter. He had perhaps 10 precious seconds to confront an impossible choice, either attempt to coax more distance from his crippled jet, thereby risking a catastrophic stall, or activate an ejection seat, a device that had never been tested from such a perilously low altitude. Both avenues offered an equally bleak prognosis for survival. In a desperate measure, Bong engaged the ejection handles. The experimental seat, designed for rapid escape, propelled him skyward with immense force and acceleration. However, the unforgiving lack of altitude proved a fatal flaw, preventing his parachute from fully deploying. He tragically impacted the ground just moments before his P-80, a symbol of aviation's future, violently slammed into a residential street, erupting into a fiery inferno that consumed both the pilot and his machine. This devastating local tragedy unfolded on the very same day, some 8,000 miles distant, that the first atomic bomb was unleashed upon the city of Hiroshima. The profound symbolic weight of Bong's untimely demise reverberated throughout the American aviation community. The legendary pilot, renowned for his exquisite mastery of the delicate interplay between human prowess and mechanical precision, had perished in an aircraft that unequivocally heralded the dawn of a new era, a future where sheer, unadulterated velocity eclipsed the deflection shooting skills that had cemented his fame. Even the K-14 computing site, a groundbreaking technological marvel that had fundamentally reshaped aerial combat, was already on the cusp of being rendered obsolete by new weapon systems so astonishingly swift that even advanced mechanical brains struggled to calculate accurate intercept solutions. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Within a matter of weeks following Bong's death, Japan capitulated unconditionally. The global conflict that had served as the powerful catalyst for the rapid advancement of gyroscopic gun sights concluded with the deployment of armaments so devastatingly potent that the very concept of air-to-air combat began to appear almost anachronistic. The terrifying prospect of nuclear bombs delivered by high-altitude strategic bombers threatened to relegate fighter aircraft to irrelevance, while the revolutionary advent of jet technology simultaneously presented an array of unprecedented tactical challenges for which existing military solutions were woefully inadequate. Colonel Cass Howe, the forward-thinking Army Air Force officer, who had initially championed and recognized the K-14's immense potential, meticulously compiled a definitive final report on the site's combat effectiveness in September 1945. The statistical findings were nothing short of remarkable. Pilots who were equipped with these innovative computing sites consistently achieved two times more kills per mission, compared to their counterparts relying on older, fixed reflector sights. Furthermore, the rate of ace production, a crucial metric of aerial superiority, experienced an astonishing 400% increase. Most importantly, the K-14 had profoundly democratized aerial killing, empowering average pilots to become deadly marksmen by seamlessly integrating mechanical precision with innate human skill. Yet, the technology's most enduring and significant lesson transcended mere improvements in gunnery. The K-14 had instilled in an entire generation of American pilots the critical ability to think three-dimensionally, to intuitively solve complex physics problems under the extreme duress of violent combat, while enduring multiple G-forces. These highly advanced cognitive skills would prove absolutely invaluable in the subsequent decades as aviation progressively evolved towards supersonic flight, the ambitious frontier of space exploration, and the sophisticated realm of missile warfare. Test pilots, seasoned airline captains, and pioneering NASA astronauts would carry forward the K-14's fundamental insight. True success frequently necessitated aiming not at where targets currently resided, but rather at where they were projected to be. The final poignant irony of the war emerged several months after its conclusion, when American occupation forces uncovered German blueprints detailing an advanced gyroscopic gun sight that would have unequivocally surpassed the K-14's capabilities. This sophisticated device, meticulously engineered by Zeiss technicians in January 1945, ingeniously incorporated radar ranging and electronic computation, features that possessed the potential to revolutionize Luftwaffe gunnery. However, the blueprints were tragically dated just weeks before Germany's ultimate collapse, rendering the innovation too late to influence the conflict's outcome. The Americans had, by a precarious margin of mere months, won the critical technological race, unequivocally demonstrating that in the unforgiving arena of warfare, much like in the immutable laws of physics, precise timing determined everything.